A prominent theme in this week's parasha, something that you might well have glossed over when reading the parasha, is the story of our forefather Yitzchak going from spot to dig wells, which of course you could just look at us and say, well, that's a practical thing. In those days, if you wanted to settle in an area, you had to obviously provide drinking water. And of course, you can understand how it would become a conflict in certain areas. If you had two clans, each who wanted to settle a particular area, obviously they'd be fighting over the water. And so we have quite a lot of interaction between Yitzchak and the Plishtim, the Philistines at the time. Yitzchak would dig a well, they would complain about it, they would say that this water belongs to us. And eventually he gets to a point where he digs a well and there's no conflict. And he says, this is a moment, ki hirchiv Hashem lanu. Hashem has expanded our circumstances, ufarinu va'aretz. And therefore we are now in a position to grow and to develop and to succeed in this land. And therefore he names the particular area Rechovois, or as we know this, the town today in Israel, Rechovot. And when you look at that phrase that he says, Hirchiv Hashem lanu ufarinu va'aretz, that Hashem has expanded our reality and he's allowed us to grow and develop in this land, obviously there's got to be a message for us, as in every part of the Torah. In fact, this whole story of digging wells must carry a message for us. So think about it for a minute. What is the process of digging a well? Something which we really don't engage in much nowadays because we just rely on the fact that you have running water in your home. So you look at a piece of land, and as far as the eye can see, it's just rock and mud and sand. You need some kind of an expert to be able to tell you that there might be water beneath the surface. And then assuming that you know that there's water beneath the surface, the challenge is to reach that water. And what's fascinating about it is the water's there. The water is pure and drinking water, and it's refreshing. It's just inaccessible. So you dig. You dig through the sand. You dig through the mud. And then you hit rock. And now it's not good enough to dig. Now you've got to drill all the way down. And there's a tremendous amount of effort that goes into hitting that aquifer where the water exists. And then it literally wells up, hence the name. It wells up and it becomes available at the surface, and you're able to drink it. And that process is metaphoric of two major themes in Jewish life and experience, both of which, when you look at something, you don't necessarily see that there's more to the picture. But once you start to dig, you find this incredible resource. The one is the story of ourselves. The other is the story of our world. The Torah frames how we're supposed to look differently at both of those to how everybody else looks at them. We look at ourselves and we think, yeah, okay, look, I'm a decent person. Perhaps I'm not so spiritual. I definitely don't feel this living, pulsating connection to God. Perhaps I've got to go search. Perhaps I've got to go look. And eventually, somewhere out there, perhaps I'll find something that will inspire me. Likewise, we look at the world and we say, the world's not a spiritual place. It's definitely far from the holy environment that a Jewish person is supposed to live in. The world has its distractions. The world has its temptations. And you think, perhaps we have to change the whole world around in order to find something of meaning and holiness. The story of the wells teaches us that's not the truth. There's something healthy and refreshing and life-giving that sits inside us, and there's something holy that sits inside the world. The trick is always just to know how to scratch beneath the surface, and that's not so simple. It takes a bit of digging, takes a lot of drilling. You've got to completely change your perspective and approach, both to yourself and to the world, to eventually look deeper. And when you look deeper, suddenly you find Hirchiv Hashem lanu. Hashem has opened up a perspective for us that we never imagined we could have. A broader perspective, a broader insight to what I am, to who I am, to what I am capable of, to what our world is capable of. And then ufarinu va'aretz. Then we begin to succeed, not just succeed in a material sense, not just in a personal sense, but in an exponential sense, releasing the power of this life-giving water that sits at the core of my being in my soul, and that sits deeply embedded within the world, the intention and value that Hashem designed this world to have. Please God, we succeed in uncovering that water. Have a wonderful Shabbos.